Hello and welcome to the channel. It's me, Chris Brooks. First of all, I would just like to say a big thank you to those people who have donated to support the channel. Very much appreciated, and it probably couldn't come at a better time. So thank you very much for that. Really do appreciate it. Now, for some more depressing news in my own personal capacity, Cadbury's, my favourite chocolate bar, seem to have gone the same way as many of the other woke companies, where Cadbury's are to curb methane emissions from burping dairy cows. I thought it was farting. Okay, a new take on it. So the company is working with its 65 dairy farmers in Wiltshire to reduce the emissions of their animals. Make what you will of this. Right, well, that's annoyed me because, like I said, it's my favourite chocolate bar. I know it's bad for you, I know it's still sugar, blah blah blah, but that's something that I personally was happy to live with. But this kind of changes it for me. I would also just like to throw in, regulators say that the active ingredient in Bovea 3-nop can be hazardous for the user administering the feed additive to cows. However, the substance is metabolized by the cows and does not remain in the milk or edible tissue that is drunk or eaten by the consumer. Because of this, there is no basis for the claim that Bovea causes infertility by drinking milk from cows that have received the additive. Therefore, we have marked this claim as false. So I just wanted to throw that caveat in there for you, just for balance. But I would also just like to say, from my own point of view, that I find it hard to trust anything these days, and what I'm about to show you kind of also shows why I have very little trust in what is said. It would appear that Cadbury's has a very dark history when it comes to eugenics. So this is an article. It's not the entire article because it was really long, but I'll leave the link to the article in the description. But this is kind of like key takeaways from that article, which I've put together for you so you don't have to. Let me know what you think in the comments. Look after yourselves, take care, speak to you all again soon. Bye for now.
What does a sitting Labour MP, a multi-million charitable trust, and the most prominent UK-based pro-assisted dying lobby group have in common? It turns out, quite a lot actually, and all of them may be about to ruin your favourite confectionery treat forever. However, the string of perturbing connections the Canary is about to reveal has far more alarming and dangerous implications. This is because it exposes the shocking eugenics origins and links of the foremost pro-assisted dying organisation in the UK, Dignity in Dying. Worse still, it sheds light on the fact that eugenics is the thread weaving through its long history, and still casts a shadow over it to this day. In particular, it revolves around one famous family who is still a key backer of the group, and also supports other organisations that grew out of the eugenics movement. It's vital context ahead of the second parliamentary reading on Kim Leadbeater's assisted dying bill. Most importantly, it underscores all the more why MPs must take chronically ill and disabled people's concerns about a slippery slope of assisted suicide extremely seriously in the upcoming vote. Assisted dying, the eugenics origin of a prolific lobby group. Before the Canary irrevocably wrecks your go-to cocoa snack, we should first delve into Dignity in Dying's eugenist genesis. Dignity in Dying started out in 1935, but then it went by the name the Voluntary Euthanasia Legalization Society, VELS. It later became the Voluntary Euthanasia Society, VES, before changing its name in 2005 to its modern-day counterpart. Then Chief Executive Deborah Annetz revealed the new name in tandem with the announcement of its new patrons. On this, she hinted back to the VELS's origins. Our two religious patrons connect us with our roots because we were set up by churchmen. However, what Annetz didn't publicise is that these churchmen were also active eugenicists. One was Dr. Killick Millard, who also later served as president of VELS. He was a Eugenics Society associate, member, and part of its council for multiple periods. Canadian historian Ian Dowbiggin has previously explored Millard's eugenicist beliefs. As Live Action reported, Dowbiggin found that, in principle, he was not against the notion of euthanasia without consent, nor was he unalterably opposed to applying euthanasia for eugenic purposes to young children with mental or emotional deficiencies. Millard also celebrated the high infant mortality rates of slum dwellers because it ensured they would not threaten the quality of the race. Labour peer Lord Arthur Ponsonby was another founding member. As The Spectator wrote, he put forward the voluntary euthanasia bill in 1936, arguing against the mistaken notion that the bill was about sparing people pain, insisting that it was really about being a burden, intended for those who are no longer of any use. Worse still, it's not only Millard and Ponsonby dignity in dying has seemingly hidden from its history. Co-founder of VES Dr. Charles John Bond was a consultant surgeon at Leicestershire Royal Infirmary. Crucially, he was another Eugenics Society associate, member, fellow, and vice president. Bond sat on the committee to establish the Bureau of Human Heredity and wrote a number of racist eugenics-orientated publications. For instance, this included one titled Causes of Racial Decay. In a 1930 speech at the Modern Churchmen's Conference, Bond's ableist, classist eugenicist beliefs were on full display. He purportedly told the conference that sterilization should be applied to cases of irresponsible persons of low intelligence and weak will. In short, Dignity in Dying began life as an organization neck-deep in the abhorrent, racist, classist, ableist eugenics movement. Naturally, it's not a fact the group likes to shout about today. Death by Cadbury's chocolate? However, its founders aren't the only problematic part of its sordid, racist, ableist, and classist history. There's more it can't sugarcoat about its eugenicist past, as well as its millionaire-funded lobbying present. Let's get this out of the way. The unexpected common denominator in all this is the family best known for inventing Britain's most beloved chocolate brand, Cadbury's. To start with, splashed across Dignity in Dying's sister charity Compassion in Dying's accounts is the G.W. Cadbury Trust. Between 2017 and 2021, it handed the organisation £43,158. It didn't donate to the non-profit in 2022 or 2023. Edward Cadbury Jr. and George Cadbury Jr. set up the trust in 1922. The brothers were heirs to the Cadbury's legacy, as grandsons to the chocolate manufacturer founder John Cadbury. It's George Cadbury Jr. the world has to thank for Cadbury's dairy milk. He and his research and development team launched it in 1905. On the face of it, there's nothing necessarily shady about a wealthy family setting up a trust for philanthropic purposes. Having said that, philanthropy itself is often paternalistic, and there is a problem with the capitalist penchant for concentrating wealth in the hands of the few. Nonetheless, the Cadbury's family were Quakers, and many engaged in campaigns for various progressive social reforms. What's more, early Cadbury's is synonymous with concerted advocacy on workers' rights, as per the legacy of Bourneville Village. However, less well publicised is that some of its members were also wrapped up in the Eugenics Society. And alarmingly, it was in these eugenics circles that the Cadbury's family appear to have come to support the concept of voluntary euthanasia, or, as advocates today are euphemistically calling it, assisted dying. The Voluntary Euthanasia Society and Cadbury's George Cadbury Jr.'s wife was a member of the Birmingham Hereditary Society, the Eugenics Society's most prominent provincial branch. So too, George and Edward's eldest brother, Lawrence John Cadbury, was a fellow of the Eugenics Society. In Lawrence's case, records show that he was a fellow from 1937 through to at least 1977. He was on the Society's council between 1938 to 39, 1941 to 44, and 1947 to 49. Most significantly, he was vice president of the Eugenics Society for 2 stints between 1945 to 46 and 1950 to 51. Crucially, Lawrence is one of the first links of the Cadbury's family to the VES. Specifically, in 1971, he signed the Case for Voluntary Euthanasia by then VES chair Benjamin Downing in Catholic journal New Blackfriars. Notably then, it was at the same time he was a member of the Eugenics Society that he also came out in support of euthanasia. However, this was just the beginning. These were hardly the only connections members of the Cadbury's family had to eugenicist originating causes. Yet more eugenics in assisted dying. The G.W. Cadbury's Trust appears to take its namesake from George Cadbury Jr.'s son, George Woodall Cadbury. He was born in 1907, so would have been 15 at the time his father and uncle established the trust. Unsurprisingly, he became a trustee for the trust. Like his mother and uncle, George was a Eugenics Society Fellow, showing in its records from 1965 and 1977. It's with George that another eugenicist-founded organization came into play as well. Live Action's article on the VES's eugenics origins compared it to Planned Parenthood with its eugenicist founder, Margaret Sanger. But it turns out there are actually links between the two groups as well. Sanger's engagement with this racist, ableist, classist ideology entangled an organization that's ostensible aims purportedly revolved around women's reproductive rights, with eugenicist notions of forced sterilization. In other words, birth control in this context moved towards state arbitration over poor, migrant, racially minoritized, and disabled women's bodies. Essentially, it was the antithesis of the progressive ideals Planned Parenthood claims to espouse. Obviously, it doesn't mean that it operates with these eugenicist views now. Nonetheless, it's a complex and controversial legacy that the organization mustn't shy away from if it's committed to genuine reproductive rights and liberation for women and people who menstruate today. But Sanger is not the end of its eugenics history either. Enter George Woodall Cadbury. He was a Canadian economist and chief economics advisor to the province of Saskatchewan. According to his obituary in the New York Times, he helped the country's first socialist government set up a healthcare system. But George was also an international leader in Planned Parenthood. He was chairman of the International Planned Parenthood Federation and honorary director of Planned Parenthood Federation of Canada. Population control rears its head. His involvement in Planned Parenthood is littered with uncomfortable contradictions, likely born out of his eugenicist leanings. On the one hand, George and his wife Barbara led the campaign to remove contraception from Canada's criminal code. On the other, they had long been associated with work on behalf of population control. Barbara Cadbury also co-edited International Planned Parenthood News alongside Sanger. Their work on this contributed to the launch of the International Planned Parenthood Federation in Bombay in 1952. Of course, it was likely no accident Sanger and others established the IPPF in India either. After all, it was arguably the Western colonialist petri dish of racist coerced sterilizations in the global South. Naturally, it's an atrocious moment of Malthusian population control history in which the IPPF played a part. Why does all this matter in the context of dignity in dying? For one, it's George's eponymous trust that funds the work of its sister charity Today. However, there are more significant connections between George Woodall Cadbury's eugenics associations and the organization Today calling for legalizing assisted suicide. One of these was the fact that at King's College, Cambridge, he was personal pupil of John Maynard Keynes. Keynes was another Eugenics Society member, in his case, a Life Fellow, and at various points, Vice President and Director. Not only this, however, but Keynes was also an early supporter of the VELS, Leadbeater's Assisted Dying Bill, a danger to chronically ill and disabled people. So, however much Dignity in Dying have tried to bury its eugenicist past, it's a chapter of the organization's history that holds ramifications for the upcoming parliamentary vote on assisted suicide. That remains the case, whether it, and backers of the bill more broadly, choose to face up to these origins and lingering connections or not. Because at the end of the day, all this begs the question, is legalizing assisted suicide safe in a society where capitalist eugenicist undercurrents are still at play? Not for many groups, the pro-assisted dying lobby has pushed to the margins in this debate. Unfortunately, across the world, there's already ample enough proof of that.